Is that time of year. Solstice of Heroes is here, and it's one of the events of all time. So let's talk about it. As of the time of recording this video, I've played approximately 4 hours of Solstice of Heroes related content, and I think that's enough for me to form my opinion on. The best part is, Bungie did all the work for me last year, and then the year before, and then the year before, and then the year before. What I'm saying is, Solstice of Heroes is fundamentally the same experience as it was in 2018 when it first launched, and I don't know how I feel about that. This year's Solstice of Heroes is remarkably similar to last year's Solstice of Heroes. You remember Bonfire Bash was introduced as a quote-unquote mix-up to the Solstice of Heroes gameplay loop, and it wasn't very good. It was turning very quickly into a stand around, wait for enemies to spawn, and throw ball simulator. This year, Bungie switched it up again. They wanted to, quote-unquote, make it more difficult for the players, so instead of having it be a stand around and throw balls into the bonfire simulator, they made it into a move around the European aerial zone and throw balls into the bonfire simulator. But it's worse than last year. The European aerial zone has been uninteresting and uninnovative since 2019. We'd already seen it once, and how it used to be was you and your fire team would run around exploring the entire aerial zone to find bosses and kill them, and the more bosses you killed, the more loot you got at the end of the day. And then you had to explore around and find the loot in chests. Now the chests always had a guaranteed spawn if you did spawn all of them. However, for some fire teams that were worse than others who could only spawn, 15, 10 chests, they'd look pretty hard for them. This year, Bungie decided that instead of using the entire European aerial zone, they'll use 4 or so hotspots where enemies spawn in. These hotspots are the same as last year. It's just that you can't stand at one of them the entire time. You have to move around. Looking at this very scientific old map of the European aerial zone, you can tell that the playable area has decreased significantly. There's more places you don't go this year than places you do go in an attempt to complete the Bonfire Bash as quick as humanly possible, like Bungie wants you to do. In my 10 or so runs of Bonfire Bash up until this point, it has just been a triangular rotation between these 3 spots, and now I'm not opposed to moving around to complete the objective. However, when it's not randomized and it's just there, movement for the sake of movement, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like anything besides a time sink. And while Bungie was encouraging more movement to its players, moving around its fantastic European aerial zone, they also took away players' sparrows, so they were no longer able to traverse as quickly as they could, slowing the entire thing down. The gameplay inside the European aerial zone is remarkably uninteresting. It is the same thing as it always been. You just run around and kill things, with the added switch up of the bonfire for the past 2 years. I almost prefer the old European aerial zone because it rewarded players for going fast. With, enemies spawning around the entire arena at their own different times, you had to efficiently and quickly move around 2 different parts of the arena to try to kill as many as you could as fast as you could, and you'd get rewarded with loot based on that. This time around, it doesn't really matter how fast you go, since the enemies only come down in the drop ships or the hive ships or the taken ships. They only spawn as fast as they would spawn in a patrol zone. So you're not rewarded for going fast, but Bungie in their TWID encouraged players to go fast. But they also removed sparrows at the same time, so I'm not sure which of these things is supposed to be true. One thing I can say this year that I can't say about last year is the tracking on the bonfire balls while throwing them into the fire has improved dramatically. I do not think I have missed a single throw that I wasn't intentionally trying to miss. They definitely worked something behind the scenes to make the bonfire balls move faster. The loot this time around from Solstice is almost the same as last year, with the addition of the new rocket launcher The Crowning Duologue is the first strand rocket launcher in the game. Normally, that would be something to get excited over. However, when you actually start to begin to look at the perk pool of this thing, you notice that you're going to use it once and then probably never again, because it doesn't even begin to compete with other legendary rocket launchers of the same class. Precision frame rocket launchers currently aren't a good place in the damage meta, so realistically you're just using this thing for fun. There's a couple interesting perk combinations that you can go for, things like Field Prep Envious Assassin, you always have your old reliable Demolitionist Adrenaline Junkie, Impulse Amplifier, and Cluster Bombs. This thing also rolls with Hatchling. I'm not sure how well that's going to work. I haven't tested it myself. I haven't gotten one to drop with Hatchling, but you can do some interesting stuff with this rocket launcher, and it's definitely worth giving it a farm. Besides the Crowning Duologue, something new and Compass Rose are back, and they are just as bad as ever. Really, there's no reason to be using either of these things. Something new, the hand cannon, is just a better Devil's clone. That is a worse better Devil's, ironically. You can get a couple interesting rolls on it, but then again, why would you even want to use something new? Compass Rose, same thing. The only difference with Compass Rose that these other weapons do not have is the possibility for Trench Barrel Grave Robber rolls on Compass Rose. It could do a little bit of work with that, but other than that, the 3 Dawning weapons that are available this year just aren't something that I see any medium to high level player using in any serious capacity. It's fun for a one and done kind of deal while you're doing the event. If you want to use Dawning weapons while farming the triumphs, great. If not, nobody's going to blame you for not wanting to use these things. The best part about the Dawning this year, I think, are the armor sets. They don't glow as much as they did last year, so some people would take that as a negative to the actual design of the armor. I don't really care. I don't have any affinity for super glowy armor. It's just distracting in my view. There are 4 other sets of Solstice armor that do the glowy fantasy correctly, so I don't think it's that big of a deal that we have something a little bit more low-key. I appreciate that it's changed up from the traditional white and gold to kind of go for a black, sleek design. I'm a big fan of that. And the stats re-rolling on the Solstice armor has always been something a little bit interesting to me. I couldn't get anything good to come out of it last year. Maybe I can get something good to come out of it this year. But there's just better ways to get good high stat armor in the current sandbox. Plenty of other ways to get better armor than Solstice, unless you just want to use the armor for the looks, in which case you can get it from the Eververse store. I don't recommend buying it with silver. Buy it with the Bright Dust if you will. They sell the armor sets every single week, so it's something to definitely look into if you like the look of it. I know I personally will be buying it with Bright Dust. This is a bit bittersweet to say. I think I do prefer the new system of the way the loot drops compared to the old way of the way the loot drops. As a solo player, for the most part, whenever I play Solstice, it's easy to get my loot from the bonfire at the end of the activity. It drops, it's just right there. I don't have to be concerned about treasure hunting. However, in the old Solstice, every time I earned 20 chests or 18 chests or something to that effect, I would never get all of them unless I was in a fire team, because my teammates, for better or worse, decided that their thumb stopped working as soon as it was time to treasure hunt. You get between 2 and 3 loot drops per run, depending on how well you do. I found that I have gotten everything I wanted when I wanted to get it. The only thing is, farming the particular rolls I want on the Crowning Duologue has been a little bit more difficult than I would have liked, because there's now one more thing to put in this year. The progression through Solstice of Heroes is definitely better this year than it was last year. It doesn't take that long to actually complete all of the triumphs for the event and to complete the triumph card. I'm almost done with it. Not trying particularly hard over the course of 4 to 5 hours. I don't think it's going to take me much longer to finish it. And a player that's seriously trying might be able to complete the entire event in only a handful of hours. It's not that many. It's not that deep of a commitment. The Solstice event card, the cosmetics contained within it, I do not think are worth the money. The 3 instant gets you get, I mean, the Liberated Fish emote is okay. It's just something, it would never be something that I would use. Other than that, these event card rewards have never been particularly worth it, in my opinion. It's just not a lot of work put into it. You're essentially paying $10 for 2 ghost projections, a ghost shell, and an emote that you're never going to use in your entire life unless it's the only one you own in that category. I'd stay away from it like the plague, really. It's just not something that I would want to spend my money on, and I don't think Bungie should be rewarded for their current business practices with more of your money spent on this event card. My final thought on the 2023 Solstice of Heroes are what I stated at the beginning of the video. It's one of the events of all time, an utterly forgettable experience that most people will not miss, will not regret not playing, with the sole exception for title hunters. The best part about Solstice of Heroes this year is that it doesn't take long to finish. You're in, you're out, you're done, you have your gear. Bungie has improved this year the second-to-second reward loop so that you're not spending 20, 30 hours grinding Solstice of Heroes. Instead, you can get the entire thing done in maybe 10 hours. But yeah, all in all, Solstice of Heroes, it definitely is one of the events of all time. And I think that the community sentiment regarding Solstice of Heroes and other similar events is that we're getting tired of it. Remember, everybody, vote with your wallets. And thank you for listening.